Imagine walking into an old house. In the corner of the room, covered in dust, sits a pair of large wooden speakers from the 1970s or 1980s. They have no Bluetooth, no smartphone app, no digital assistant, no futuristic design. They are heavy, bulky, and completely outdated by today's standards. But then someone connects them to a good amplifier, plays a familiar song, and something surprising happens. The sound feels alive. The vocals feel natural. The instruments seem to have more character. And suddenly, you start wondering, how can speakers built 40 years ago compete with modern technology? Were vintage speakers actually better? Or is it just nostalgia? Today, we are going to explore the real differences between vintage and modern speakers, why many audio enthusiasts still choose classic designs, and what modern speakers do better. Because the truth is not as simple as old is always better, or new technology always wins. The answer is much more interesting. Welcome to Retro Chronicles. The world of audio has changed dramatically over the last few decades. In the golden age of hi-fi, especially from the 1960s to the 1980s, companies competed to build the best possible sound systems. Brands like JBL, Pioneer Corporation, Sansui Electric, and Technics created speakers that were designed to last decades. These speakers were often large, expensive, and built with a focus on pure sound quality. Today, the speaker market looks completely different. Modern speakers are smaller, smarter, and more convenient. Many include wireless connections, digital processing, voice control, and compact designs that fit modern homes. But when it comes to the actual listening experience, many people still believe vintage speakers have something special. So what exactly makes them different? Let's find out. The philosophy behind vintage speakers? One of the biggest differences between vintage and modern speakers is the philosophy behind their design. During the golden age of hi-fi, manufacturers followed a simple idea: build the best speaker possible, even if it required more materials, more space, and more cost. A speaker was not just another electronic product. It was considered a long-term investment. Many vintage speakers were built using thick wooden cabinets, large magnets, heavy-duty components, and carefully designed crossover networks. Manufacturers wanted these speakers to reproduce music as naturally as possible. A listener was expected to sit down, focus, and enjoy the experience. Modern speakers often follow a different approach. Today, manufacturers have to consider many things. How small can the speaker be? How affordable can it become? Can it connect wirelessly? Can it work with smartphones? Can it fit into a modern apartment? These are not bad goals. In fact, modern speakers solve many problems that older speakers had. But the priorities have changed. Vintage speakers were often designed around the music. Modern speakers are often designed around convenience. Why vintage speakers often sound different? So why do vintage speakers have a different sound? The answer comes down to several important factors. 1. Larger cabinets. Many vintage speakers were physically large, and size matters. A bigger cabinet allows manufacturers to use larger drivers, especially woofers. A large woofer can move more air, creating deeper and more natural bass. This is why some classic speakers can produce a powerful low-end sound without needing extra bass enhancement. Modern compact speakers often use digital processing to create the feeling of bigger sound from smaller hardware. It works surprisingly well. But there is still a difference between electronically creating bass and physically moving large amounts of air. 2. Paper and natural materials. Many vintage speakers used paper cone drivers. Today, many speakers use advanced materials like aluminum, carbon fiber, and synthetic composites. Modern materials can be extremely accurate and durable. However, Many listeners love the sound character of older materials. Paper cones often produce a warm and smooth sound that some people describe as more musical. This is one reason why vintage speakers continue to attract collectors. 3. Analog crossover design. The crossover is the part of a speaker that separates frequencies. It sends low frequencies to the woofer and high frequencies to the tweeter. Vintage speakers often used carefully handcrafted analog crossover networks. Many were designed by engineers who spent countless hours testing and tuning the sound. Some modern speakers use advanced digital signal processing instead. Digital technology allows incredible control, but some enthusiasts believe traditional analog designs have a certain natural character that is difficult to reproduce. The build quality difference. Another major difference is construction quality. Pick up many vintage speakers from the 1970s. You will immediately notice something. They are heavy, very heavy. That weight often comes from thick wooden cabinets, large transformers, powerful magnets, and durable internal components. Many manufacturers built speakers with the expectation that customers would keep them for decades. A speaker purchased in 1978 could still be working today. Modern speakers can also be extremely well built. But the market has changed. Many manufacturers now compete in a world where customers expect lower prices, smaller designs, and frequent upgrades. This does not mean modern speakers are poorly made. Some modern high-end speakers are engineering masterpieces. But at many price points, vintage speakers often offer impressive materials and construction. Why modern speakers are actually better in many ways. Now, before we say vintage speakers are always superior, we need to be fair. Modern speakers have advantages that older speakers simply cannot match. Smart features. Many modern speakers offer wireless streaming, Bluetooth Wi-Fi connection, voice control room, correction, digital equalization. A vintage speaker cannot do any of this without additional equipment. Better accuracy. Modern engineering tools allow designers to measure speaker performance with incredible precision. Computer modeling, advanced materials, and improved manufacturing techniques have created some extremely accurate speakers. A modern speaker can reproduce music with amazing detail. Smaller designs. Not everyone wants two giant wooden boxes dominating their living room. Modern speakers are designed for today's lifestyle. A small apartment, minimalist room, or office setup often benefits from compact modern designs. So modern speakers are not worse. They simply represent a different set of priorities. Why audiophiles still love vintage speakers? So why do people still search for old speakers decades after they were released? There are several reasons. The emotional connection. Vintage audio is not just about sound, it is about history. A speaker from the 1970s carries a story. Maybe it was bought when someone purchased their first stereo system. Maybe it played music during family gatherings. Maybe it survived multiple generations. There is something special about owning a piece of audio history. The sound character. Many vintage speakers have a unique personality. Some sound warm. Some sound powerful. Some sound energetic. They may not always measure perfectly by modern standards. But music is not only about measurements, it is also about emotion. A speaker that makes you want to listen longer has achieved something important. Value for money. One of the biggest reasons people buy vintage speakers is value. A speaker that cost thousands decades ago can sometimes be found today for a fraction of the original price. With proper restoration, many vintage models can compete with modern speakers costing much more. The problems with vintage speakers. However, vintage speakers are not perfect. They require attention. Older components can wear out. Foam surrounds can deteriorate. Capacitors in crossover networks can age. Cabinets may need restoration. And because these speakers are decades old, finding replacement parts can sometimes be difficult. Buying vintage audio requires research. A beautiful-looking speaker does not always mean it performs perfectly. A careful buyer needs to check condition, history, and availability of repairs. Which one should you choose? So, vintage speakers versus modern speakers. Which one wins? The answer depends on what you value. If you want wireless convenience, compact design, smart features, modern technology, then modern speakers are probably the better choice. But if you want character, classic craftsmanship, a unique listening experience, long-lasting construction, the feeling of owning audio history, then vintage speakers are incredibly special. The truth is, vintage speakers are not automatically better. Modern speakers are not automatically better. They represent two different eras of audio engineering. One focuses on craftsmanship, size, and musical character. The other focuses on innovation, convenience, and technology. And perhaps the best part about audio is that there is no single answer. The perfect speaker is the one that makes you stop thinking about technology and simply enjoy the music. If you enjoyed this journey through the history of sound, make sure to subscribe to Retro Chronicles. Here, we explore legendary audio equipment, forgotten technology, and the stories behind the machines that changed the way we experience music. And tell us in the comments, do you prefer the character of vintage speakers or the convenience of modern audio technology? Until next time, keep listening, keep exploring, and keep discovering the classics. This is Retro Chronicles.